Hey guys, welcome to AP Macroeconomics, our very first unit, and it's the basic economic concepts. So this unit is the same in both AP Macroeconomics and AP Microeconomics. So these two courses, this is where they overlap. In any economics class, you're going to start with the basic concepts, and our objective this week is to understand how and why economists study scarcity, choice, and cost. Those are the really big topics of basically all of economics, but we're going to narrow it down to choices that we make and the cost of those choices. So, before we get into all of that, let's first define what economics is. So, economics is the study of how societies allocate scarce resources. And that definition kind of packs a lot into it. The last three words, allocate, scarce resources, there's a lot of information in those three words. First, allocate. Societies allocate or distribute, divide, divvy up things, resources, goods and services. But how do they allocate that? Well, that changes depending on the type of economy it is. Is every citizen of the economy going to get an equal slice of pie? Are some people's slices of pie bigger? Is there going to be wealth versus poverty? Or is it going to be roughly that everyone has the same? It just depends. Scarce, well, this word kind of has its own separate meaning. Scarcity or scarce means it's both limited in supply and it's a wanted item. It's a wanted product. And so if it's just limited, and most things in the world are limited, even things like water in the ocean, that's limited. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of it, but it is limited in supply. It's not like an infinite amount of water in the world, especially clean water. But ocean water is not scarce because it's not wanted. Like, you can go to the ocean and take some, and it doesn't no one's going to be hurt or offended. And the reason we know that is because there's no price tag on it. If it has a price tag, it's scarce. It's both wanted and it's limited. If it didn't have a price tag, then it doesn't meet one of those qualifications. Like, ocean water is limited, but it's not really wanted by anyone in particular. And resources, well, there's lots of different types of resources. But for economists, we're going to classify them into the 5 categories, and they're listed on the screen. Resources, and from now on, we're probably going to use the term factors of production. The FOPs, the factors of production, the factors, the things you need in order to produce. And they are land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and human capital. Okay, so let's look at each one of these individually. Land, obviously, is land. You need a place to be physically on the earth to produce something. Sometimes it's something as I'm growing tomatoes. I definitely need land. But anything that comes from the land, whether that be lumber, oil, minerals, even water, is going to be considered land. That's where we're going to classify those things. Labor is any human workers doing the work. So if you're, making muffins, it's the baker, it's the chef. But what about robots? What if you have robots building a car in a car factory? Where would robots fit into? Well, you don't pay robots. They're not technically employed there. That's capital. Capital's any physical stuff, machinery. If you, let's say, are baking cookies or muffins or whatever, it's going to be like your oven, your bowls, your spoons. It's going to be the electricity even that you need to plug in your oven. If you're a farmer, it's going to be like your tractor, your plow, your fertilizer, things like that. Entrepreneurship is the person taking the risk, paying for the land, paying for the labor, paying for the capital. It's not money itself. Notice how money is nowhere on that list. Money is not considered a resource for economists. But the person that brings the money, the person that pays for it all, think of the investor, that's going to be the entrepreneur. So if you're, a fan of Shark Tank, the show, those are entrepreneurs. They're investors. They're the ones paying for capital, paying for labor in order to produce a product. And the last one is human capital. It's kind of separate. This does not mean like a human robot. That's not what that means. That means any type of education or training in order to make your workers more efficient. So I want you to think of like college or some sort of specialty program that trains workers. So this is going to be why you guys go to college, because you are more productive as a worker to the economy once you have human capital. So I could, if I wanted to make more cookies at my bakery, I could hire more workers, or I could just train the workers that I already have to be more efficient and more productive. That training would be human capital. Okay, so those are the 5 factors of production, the 5 categories of FOPs. And at the beginning of this, I said that this whole concept, this whole unit is both in micro and in macroeconomics. But I didn't say like what the difference between those two things are. So this class is AP Macroeconomics. Macroeconomics studies the economy as a whole, things that affect everyone. So we're going to be talking about things like GDP, inflation, unemployment, the stock market a little bit. We're not going to be saying things like costs and revenue and profit. That's typically when you're talking about a particular business or maybe a particular industry. So that's microeconomics. So if I say prices of everything in the economy has gone up 2%, that's inflation, that's macroeconomics. But if I say like the price of skateboards have gone up, that's one particular industry. So that's microeconomics. So if it's a particular industry, household, product, something very specific that doesn't affect everyone, that's microeconomics. But macroeconomics is the economy as a whole. And some basic economic principles in all of economics are, first, generalization. We are going to generalize everything. Meaning, I'm going to say, like, in most cases, this is how it works. Because I can't possibly talk about every scenario that's ever happened, and even when people act irrationally. So we like to generalize things and say, well, in most cases, this is what happens. Graphical expression. Everything we do, we're going to put it in a graph. We're going to draw it out. Show math. Another economic principle is we're going to use the term ceteris paribus. It's Latin. It means other things equal. Meaning, in reality, in like a real economy, there's so many variables happening and changing all at the same time between like other economies affecting ours, and then there's like Congress affecting the economy, there's a stock market affecting the economy, there's like people's hopes and dreams affecting the economy, and then there's like trade, and maybe there's a shortage in this country. There's so many factors affecting like unemployment. But we can only graph 2 or 1. Why? Because we only have X and Y axes. We're not going to have 15,000 different axes graphing every single individual variable that might affect something. So we say, hold all those things equal, meaning everything is remaining constant except for the 2 variables I'm talking about, the X and Y axis. Everything else, ceteris paribus, we're going to kind of leave it the same. We're going to cancel it out. We're going to just pretend the other factors don't exist except for the 2 that I'm talking about. And then the idea of normative versus positive statements. These are how you like express a thought. So economists are going to use positive statements, factual statements based in reality, based in math, based in historical data. Normative statements are opinions. Normative statements are, I wish it was like this, or maybe we should do this other thing. While positive statements are, well, if we do this, here are the consequences. Normative statements would be like, well, we shouldn't do that, or maybe we should. So think of it this way. Economists use positive statements, factual statements. They are positive. This is a fact. Politicians will take those facts and try to create policy using those facts. So economists would say, hey, if we raise minimum wage, This is what happens. And then politicians are going to say, well, based on this fact statement over here, I think we should raise minimum wage, or I think we shouldn't raise minimum wage. So they're trying to make an opinion based on a fact that an economist said. So positive statements are facts, normative statements are opinions. We're going to speak in facts. So I just said the definition of economics is a study of how societies allocate, divvy up, pass out scarce resources. So there's a choice, right? There's like who's going to get what, and what resources are we going to use, and what are we going to make? So why do we have to make choices to begin with? And the term of scarcity in the definition is the answer. We had to make choices because of scarcity. We can't use all of our lumber. Let's say that's our resource in our made-up economy, lumber. We can't let's build log houses and let's build this and boats and this. We can't build an infinite amount of everything with the lumber that we have because we only have so much lumber. We're going to have to make a choice. It's either a tree house or a boat. You can't have both because we only have so many logs. And so the idea of scarcity is the reason we have to make choices at all. Forget economists. This is like a life thing. You have so many choices of how you could have spent your time right now. You could have done another class. You could have been sleeping. You could have been talking with friends. You could have been working. You could have been doing so many things. But why couldn't you have done all of those things? Well, your time is scarce. So you have to choose with the limited time that you have in your life how you're going to use that time. And if you're watching this, then I know how you chose. If you're not watching this, well, I don't know what you chose, but I know you didn't choose this. And you can't do both. You can't be off doing something and taking classes and sleep and this all at the same time because of scarcity. Okay, so here's a picture, classic picture. Choices were made. Do you see the choice that was made in the picture? And I'm going to assume that we're making a big assumption here. I'm assuming that this person is walking in the grocery store. They had a gallon of milk. They saw the beer. They're like, and they made a choice to put down the milk and take a beer in its place. I know that there's other scenarios where this could have been like a different thing that was happening. I'm just pretending that is the scenario that we have. So why was the choice made? And don't think because people liked beer. No. Remember, scarcity. Why was a choice made at all? Why couldn't they have had both? And I want you to think about it. Maybe they don't have enough money for both. Maybe their room in the fridge is scarce and they only have room for one or the other. Of course, there are lots of things that influence the choice, and that could be, well, people like beer over milk, or maybe they're having a party, or maybe they just turned 21 or something. That influences a choice, but that's not the reason why we made a choice. It's the reason of why we made that choice, but why did we make a choice to begin with? The scarcity. And there's the idea of utility. Utility is how economists describe happiness. So how many units of utility does milk give you versus beer? Well, some people prefer milk over beer. Some people prefer beer over milk. And so different levels of happiness that the milk or that the beer gives you might also influence your choice. So utility is just a way to describe happiness. My question is, what did the milk cost? Sorry. What did the beer cost? Not milk. They didn't pick the milk. I know that because the milk's there. But what did the beer cost? What was the cost of the choice? And some of you might be like zooming in or trying to was that $15 or is that $9 or $8? How much? Which one did they take? Choice and cost of choices for economists have nothing to do with price. The cost of your choice is what you can no longer do because you made the choice. They chose beer. They gave up the milk. They made that choice because maybe they didn't have enough money to buy both. What did the beer cost them? the opportunity to have milk because they had to put the milk down to get the beer. So what did beer cost? It cost the milk. And that's the idea of opportunity cost. And opportunity cost has two different definitions. One definition is the cost of something is what you give up to get something else. You could have also defined it as the second best choice. So let's think about that. The cost of the beer is the giving up of the milk. They had to put down the milk to grab the beer. Yes, they also had to pay for the beer. I get that. But they can no longer have the milk because of the purchase of the beer. Also, the milk was the second best choice. I know that because it's still on the shelf. The first best choice went home with the customer, but the second best choice is what was ever given up. And that's the definition of opportunity cost. So it's you give up the opportunity of something when you go with something else, when you go with your first best choice. So right now, think about all the things you could be doing besides this. You could be sleeping, you could be hanging out with friends, you could be at a job, whatever. Right now, if you're watching this was your first best choice because you're watching it. If you decided to go with like your fifth best choice, that was an irrational choice for you. You should have gone with something better than this. But you didn't. You picked this because economics rocks and whatever. But what did it cost you? It cost you, well, if you were giving up sleep, it cost you sleep. Maybe it cost you time with your friends. Maybe it cost you, I don't know your life. I don't know your choices. But you had to give up something to watch this. And maybe you're feeling it right now. Maybe you're feeling tired. Maybe you're feeling bored. But you're feeling something. You feel the loss of something. And that loss is opportunity cost. Of course, we can't forget that you have to pay for beer. You have to pay for this and that, the other. And that's the idea of implicit versus explicit cost. So the implicit cost is another way to say opportunity cost. So if you see the term implicit cost, that's just a synonym for opportunity cost. Explicit cost, that's the price tag. That is like with the actual beer, I don't even know what it was, $15.49. $15.49 is the explicit cost of the beer, and the implicit cost of the beer was the milk, was the opportunity cost. So both things matter to people. So let's say that you go to college next year, and college costs you, let's say $50,000 a year. Well, that $50,000 you had to pay, or your parents had to pay, someone had to pay. You also are giving up the opportunity to work when you go to college. You can't have a full-time job and make a whole bunch of money if you're also taking classes. It's really hard to do. So not only are you giving up the $50,000 in tuition, you're giving up however much money you would have made in that year. So really, you talk about college being expensive. It's more expensive than you think, because not are there explicit costs like tuition, but there's implicit costs like what you would have been doing with your time in the same amount of time. And let's not forget marginal cost versus marginal benefit. So the term marginal means like for one more or one less of something. So when you make choices, you should make them for all or not. You should make choices for one choice at a time. What's the benefit of one more hour of homework? Well, what's the cost of that one more hour of homework? Well, then you have to make a choice of, do I continue? You don't just sit down and say, I'm going to do homework for the rest of my life and I'm never going to do anything else. No, that's irrational. You say, okay, I'm not doing anything for the next 30 minutes. I guess I can make a choice for my next 30 minutes of life. And you try to weigh what's it going to cost you and the benefit you're going to get from it. So let's say you are starting to study at 7 o'clock at night. You're probably going to get a lot of benefit of studying. You're going to learn a lot of information in that first hour of studying because you're bringing things out and you're learning out again. And the cost is an hour of your time that you could be doing something else. But if you're hitting, like in college, you'll see you're hitting the 2-3 a.m. range of like studying. Are you really going to be learning? And you've been studying this whole time, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Are you really going to be learning something so fascinating and interesting in that 2 and a 3 o'clock hour? Probably not. And so the benefit of studying that extra hour is probably not worth the cost of now being sleep deprived for an hour. And so your choices are going to change depending on the marginal benefit, that one extra benefit versus the one additional cost. And hopefully you make your choices rationally by only doing things that have a larger benefit than cost. If you're doing things that cost more than you're benefiting, you're not smart. Of course, most people aren't. So we're going to stop here. We're going to do this together. You can get a little sneak preview so you can see what I'm going to be asking you guys to do when we get together. It says, for assuming, of course I can't read. It says, assuming that you can do one thing after high school, I'm going to choose blank. And it's going to cost me the opportunity to blank. And we're going to be writing some choices. And we're going to rank them of what you guys can do after high school. And we'll do it together. So it'll be fun. That is where I think I'm ending for today. Yeah, that's good enough. So here was back to opportunity cost in case you need to write any more of that down. And I will see you guys later. Thanks for joining me in our very first lesson. There will be many more to come. And have a great afternoon, guys. If I can just get to the point where I can pause this right now. Bye.